found a cool-looking beach house on Airbnb that wasn't very expensive. A private little place right on the sand, available that upcoming weekend. It was perfect for an unexpected mini vacation with my girlfriend, Mara. The photos showed nice furniture, a king-size bed, and reclining beach chairs in the backyard. It looked awesome. I booked it online, and the host got back to me right away. His name was Tom, and he arranged to meet us at the beach house that weekend to give us keys and do a quick walkthrough. Tom pulled up just as we got out of our car. He seemed friendly enough, but something about him gave me an uneasy vibe. As he led us inside, he kept finding excuses to touch Mara. He'd put his hand on her shoulder or graze her arm. She shot me a few nervous looks. He also took a jacket out of the closet and grabbed something out of the bathroom medicine cabinet. It was odd. The inside of the house wasn't as nice as the pictures. The furniture was worn and mismatched. There were 2 twin beds instead of a king size. I mentioned it to Tom, and he explained that the bed had to be replaced and the twins were temporary. He said we could push them together if we wanted. Besides that, the place had a faint but unmistakable odor that cleaning products couldn't quite cover up. It was a little disappointing, but the view of the ocean was just as amazing as advertised. So we decided to make the best of it. It was only for a few nights anyway. After Tom left, Mara double-checked that the door locked securely. She mentioned that he gave her the creeps, and she was glad not to have to deal with him again. Our first night was pretty mellow. We picked up groceries, cooked dinner, took a walk on the beach, and went to bed early. Sometime around 2 a.m., I got jarred awake by a loud banging noise. For a second, I wasn't sure if it was real or part of a dream. Then I heard it again, a loud banging coming from outside. I got up and looked out the window. It was pitch black. But then the motion sensor light flicked on. Tom was rummaging around in front of the small garage attached to the beach house. It was really weird. What was he doing out there at this time of night? I thought about waking Mara up, but decided not to upset her. I figured Tom was just grabbing some tools or supplies. After a few minutes, the outside lights switched off and all went quiet. A little annoyed by the whole thing, I went back to bed. The next day, we wanted to do some sunbathing and just chill on the beach. Mara found a small cooler and packed some lunch. I looked everywhere for beach chairs, but couldn't find any. So we grabbed a blanket to sit on and walked down the beach. It had only been an hour or so when I decided it was beer time. I walked back to the house and went inside to grab some beers from the fridge. Sitting on the counter in plain sight was a large hunting knife, the blade coated in rusty, dried blood. It hadn't been there before, and I'd locked up the house. It kind of scared me at first. I cautiously searched the house to see if anyone was there or any of our stuff was gone. I didn't find anything out of place. I could only assume that Tom came into the house and accidentally left it there. I mean, I hoped it was Tom and no one else had come into the house. Then again, it shouldn't be him. He shouldn't be coming in without asking us. I texted him and he got right back to me, confirming the knife was his and I should leave it by the garage door. No apology. No explanation. This meant that Tom had used his own keys to unlock the door and come in our place. I mean, yeah, it is his property, but we are paying guests. We paid for privacy. I didn't like it at all. What an asshole. And why a hunting knife? He was such a creepy guy. It didn't occur to me until much later, when I was lying awake in bed that night, that maybe I should be more concerned about that knife, and Tom too. Like, the knife could be used as a weapon. What if he's a psycho? He seems to think it's okay to come and go at all hours. What if we're not dressed and he just walks in? And what about when we're not there? Mara leaves her purse at the house when we go for walks on the beach. It was unacceptable. I decided to talk to him about it, forcefully, the next day. Since I couldn't sleep anyway, I got up and made rounds inside the house, locking windows, double-checking the doors, making sure everything was secure. That's when I saw a flashlight flickering back and forth out on the beach, quite a distance from the house. At first, I was curious. It was around midnight. Who would be walking around this late? But the person got closer and closer as I watched. Eventually, the person was practically walking up to our door. The outside light detected the motion and switched on. It was Tom. My fists clenched, and I had this uncontrollable urge to punch the guy. He smiled at me and made a snarky comment that I should be in bed with my wife. So I asked him, "Why aren't you in bed? What are you doing?" He seemed irritated to have to explain himself, but told me that he walks the property every night. There are teenagers in the area that sometimes cause trouble. Then he told me to get some sleep, waved, and walked off into the darkness. I didn't believe his story. Something about him had me on edge. I went back inside, locked up, checked on Mara, closed the bedroom door, and shoved a chair under the doorknob. The only weapon I had was one of those tiny, cheap wallet knives. But I dug it out and put it under my pillow. I tried to shake it off the next morning. Somehow, things don't seem as bad in the light of day. It was our last day at the beach, and Mara really wanted beach chairs. I thought about texting Tom, but I didn't want to have to deal with him. I'd noticed a shed at the edge of the property, and I was pretty sure the key for it was hanging by the back door because it was labeled shit. I figured if the key was right there, it wasn't off limits to us. So I went out there, opened it up, and couldn't believe what I found. Inside the shed was a bare mattress with a crumpled blanket on it, a mini fridge, and a microwave. There were dishes and packaged food in a plastic tote. A metal barrel used as a trash can overflowed with garbage. There were clothes hanging off hooks and tossed all over the floor. A small camping lantern hung from the ceiling. The hunting knife was sitting on the floor next to the mattress. It smelled bad like BO. This was not a storage shed. Tom was living in it. It totally gave me the chills. The noises at night. Tom hanging around and showing up at odd times. That he always seemed to know when we weren't there. Well, it turns out he was always 20 yards away from us. He didn't even try to give us privacy. Instead, it was almost like he was spying on us. I slammed the shed door and quickly relocked it. I told Mara what I'd found, and she was ready to leave right then and there. I convinced her to stay, but it ate at us the rest of the day. All kinds of crazy thoughts went through our heads about Tom's state of mind and what his background was. He was the main topic of conversation all the way through supper. That night, after supper, I told Mara I was stepping outside for some fresh air. I needed a few minutes alone to clear my head. We hadn't seen Tom all day, which was good, but I couldn't wait to leave in the morning. I was only gone for maybe 10 minutes, but when I went back inside, there sat Tom. He was at the kitchen table, casually eating a sandwich. He seemed disappointed to see me, but put on an innocent smile. Mara was looking at me with huge, scared eyes. He explained that he'd just stopped by to make sure we'd had a nice stay, and Mara had been sweet enough to offer him a sandwich. She stood behind him, violently shaking her head no. I didn't know if that meant no, she didn't offer him a sandwich, or if it was her way of telling me to get him the hell out of the house. I stood there frozen for a minute. But then my mad kicked in, and I started shouting at him. I yelled at him about not telling us he was living in the shed, and how he can't just come and go, and all that. I was shaking, and I'm sure steam was coming out of my ears. Tom acted amused, like it was no big deal. He got up, set his plate on the counter, and headed out with a casual wave. It took Mara almost an hour to calm me down. We cleaned up, packed up almost all our stuff, and went to bed early. I had barricaded us in the bedroom again, and stayed up most of the night waiting for sunrise. I went to the windows a lot, and saw the dim glow of Tom's camping light coming under the door of the shed. We should have just left that night. But as soon as it was daylight, I woke up Mara, loaded the car, and we drove away. We didn't see Tom at all, and it was a relief. Back at home, I wrote a review of the beach house on AirBNB. I mentioned the crappy furniture and twin beds, and that the host was around unexpectedly a lot, and it was uncomfortable. I didn't mention what a total psycho the guy was. I thought it was a nice review, considering. Maybe a week later, I got an email from AirBNB. Tom had replied to my review. The message was short. I don't appreciate false accusations. The beach house is my private property. Next time, stay out of my bedroom. Arrived and entered the house by way of the provided code for the electronic door lock. We had stopped to pick up groceries and some needed refrigeration, so we carried those in first, which is when I discovered the fridge filled with food. Looked around and saw more food and personal items in the kitchen. Called out to no answer, so we walked around a bit. Imagine if you left your home for the day for work and a stranger walked in. This is exactly how it all appeared. Hurried back to the car, afraid we were going to get the cops called on us, and called the company, who reassured us and told us the house owner had said he was going to get things cleared up, which apparently hadn't happened. This seemed like something the company should have checked, but they assured us it was fine to just push things aside. In the process of clearing things away into a large closet, we found half-used bottles of cancer medications and some paperwork, which indicated the owner had been being treated for stage 4 cancer. Between these and other paperwork found in the house, we are fairly certain the owner died, and his children had the body transported back to where his wife was buried in a northern state. We guessed they arranged to rent the place out without ever coming to clear his belongings. I received comments when I first told this story, and I was asked about us being concerned about the recently deceased person still haunting the place. To which I responded, if so, he is a kind and congenial ghost. Since then, everyone on the trip has experienced great and good luck. My son-in-law got a new, better paying, less physically demanding job. He wasn't looking. Someone he'd worked with on his job called him up and offered him the job out of the blue based on their experience with him the day after he returned to work from our trip. An item of great sentimental value I had deemed lost forever dropped out of a piece of furniture when we moved it, doing a big cleaning in preparation for guests. Both my spouse and I, previously both passed over for promotions, received very good promotions. My grandson had always suffered fairly severe motion sickness, and suddenly, apparently, outgrew it. By suddenly, I mean we realized when we got home from the airport. We'd forgotten to give him his medication, and he'd been fine. He was sick twice on the flight out, despite taking medication. He's been fine on several car trips since. My daughter got her first real after-college job. She applied to several places to her desired position, but she wasn't sure they'd count her job during college working in a related field as experience. And besides, who gets their first choice straight out of college? She was hired on the spot in her interview for her most desired choice. All I have to say is, if this is how he haunts us, he is more than welcome to stay. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please subscribe to my channel. Also, if you have a true story that is scary, creepy, or horrifying, which is well written and you would like me to share, send the story to spinethrills@gmail.com.